Empowerment to 9,000 students each semester. Amy holds a PhD in history from the University of California, Los Angeles, and a BA from Barnard College of Columbia University. She's authored 2 monographs, Queer Compulsions, Race, Nation, and Sexuality in the Affairs of Yoni Noguchi, and Discriminating Sex, White Leisure and the Making of the American Oriental, in quotes. She's also the contributing author for the National Park Service's Historic LGBT Theme Study, which won the Paul E. Buchanan Award from the Vernacular Architecture Forum. Amy additionally served as co-founding curator of the GLBT History Museum, the first queer history museum in the United States.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Well, I'm currently serving as Dean of the College of Ethnic Studies. I'm here on this panel as a faculty member, specializing in queer studies and Asian American studies. I applied for the first opening in sexuality studies in the College of Ethnic Studies in 2001. And I've since seen the college hire queers, though not necessarily queer studies specialists, but in other areas of expertise. While the first posting in sexuality studies was in 2001, the second did not come until a decade later, in 2011, in Asian American studies. And not until 2 years ago have we had 3 more explicit calls for sexuality or queer studies specialists in Latino studies, Africana studies, and race and resistance studies. I've at times felt as though it's been a lonely road in ethnic studies, even as I find myself most comfortable and most loved in the college. So just this past spring, the Academic Senate approved a queer ethnic studies minor, and the degree became officially offered this fall, which is like 6 weeks ago. We in fact have a student who's graduating at the end of this semester with the minor, and I am simply overjoyed. The degree is comprised of 4 courses total, 2 core courses in the College of Ethnic Studies, including our course on queers of color, 1 foundational course in women and gender studies or sexuality studies, and 1 last class to be chosen among 10 ethnic studies courses that address queer studies. The minor is also a GE minor, meaning all the courses fulfill an area of general education. Thus, you can literally meet the GE by taking ethnic studies courses on sexuality and scoop up the minor on the way. Logistically, it's super easy, and it's good for students. National data shows that students with minors do better in college than those without. And SF state graduation rates show that students who minor in degrees in the College of Ethnic Studies have significantly higher graduation rates than those who don't. Moreover, education specialists have been saying time and time again that students who take classes and earn degrees that resonate with them have greater success in college. I still remember when the dean at the time came to me with the idea of creating the degree 4 years ago. He'd originally suggested a queer ethnic studies major, and I felt nervous. First, because I wasn't sure the College of Ethnic Studies would support it, and second, because I thought my colleagues in sexuality studies as well as women and gender studies would block it. Admittedly, I've always been a queer who is nervously queer. Even as my professional career has been built upon queer studies, I've been socialized, very well I might add, as a Japanese American woman. And what that means is that while I will never compromise my values or my identity, I loathe to assert myself at the expense of another person's discomfort. The pressure of group judgment also always sits squarely over my shoulder. Thus, with things queer in straight company, I always admittedly feel a tinge of shame, even as I fulfill enthusiastically my obligations as a professional queer. While times seem more queer-friendly now than ever before, my anxiety, which some might call internalized homophobia, is not without warrant, even in the College of Ethnic Studies, a place of equity and justice. During my first week, as I unpacked my boxes in my office, 2 faculty members visited me separately and declared explicitly that they were bi. For the straight folks in the room, that's not considered normal and usually only done in more repressive environments. During my first month, 3 old-timers, OGs, all straight men, 2 from Latino Studies, and 1 from Asian American Studies approached me and told me how grateful and important it was for me to be there, in that way in which they were worried that something terrible was going to happen to me. During the first year, tensions grew against the sitting dean, and homophobic comments were directed at him in all college emails. And within the first 5 years, a new hire in American Studies, who's not totally out, had cocksucker scrawled onto his office nameplate. Later, when I became associate dean, one of the department chairs warned our department about the, quote, homosexualization of the college. And just last year, a founding striker told an associate vice president in another division that she worried that the College of Ethnic Studies has lost its way since it had become homosexual. For me, queer ethnic studies has always been about a provocative internal critique that must take place so that we can find shelter in our own communities. Many of us continue to struggle from alienation, disrespect, and even violence, frequently from the people who presume to love us most. We translate for our mothers, restock the refrigerators of our aging fathers, take care of our grandparents' Medicaid and SSI, drive our siblings to dialysis, and finally mop up their diarrhea and vomit after they overdose, even as they refuse to acknowledge our way of being, our lovers, our values, and likely even beat us when we were children. This is often the thankless job and experience of queers of color, and why we too are driven to alcohol, drugs, self-destructive behavior, and even suicide. Courses in queer studies, queer ethnic studies, similar to other courses in ethnic studies, allow students to feel less alone in their recognition of structural inequality and violence, and empowers them to build community and take action through the study of queer of color organizing. It's foundationally about coalition building across different ethnicities, as articulated by Gloria Anzaldúa, and across other criminalized communities, such as the poor, as articulated by Kathy Cohen. When people ask me, why queer ethnic studies? I want to shout back, why not queer ethnic studies? At Larkin Street Youth Center, the city's largest youth homeless shelter, 49% of their dominantly youth of color are queer. Black trans women and trans Latinas are particularly at risk of being murdered. In the first 6 months of this year, 11 trans women were murdered, and all were African American. 2 additional trans Latinas died in custody, one with ICE and the other while on Rikers Island. While the Supreme Court ruled in favor of freedom to marry in 2015 in a historic legal win for same-sex couples, there have been more than 200 anti-LGBT bills introduced in 20 states since the ruling. In fact, half of queers in America are living in states legally hostile to queers. If we as a college are to serve the underserved, there's no question as to the necessity of queer ethnic studies. What might be less obvious is how queer studies, in fact, positively impact straight folks as well. In a world in which people embrace queer values, people could live more honestly and openly without moral judgment and the destruction it brings. We could negotiate open or polyamorous relationships if we wanted to. Have 2 sets of parents instead of just 1. Choose to have children as single parents without stigma. Wear any kind of outfit without worry of being assaulted. And be unashamed of all kinds of non-exploitative sexual fetishes that we might have. Indeed, embracing queer studies brings about not just social revolution, but incredible personal freedom. Yet, until the world is freed by queer ethnic studies, we must continue to fight, since the alternative is to die. As well, we must also force ourselves to love, or else we become embittered with the hate that is constantly flung upon us. In conclusion, as quarterly as I show up to work, my internalized homophobia sits just as quietly on my shoulder each day. It is less about how I feel about myself, or worry about others will interact with me, and more about my lingering shame that I might embarrass my mother and cause even more pain to a life of suffering that she's endured as an immigrant. Yet, the reality is that the queer bus has already rode through San Francisco State and dropped off folks on our side of town. and it happened long before I arrived. Now, I rely heavily on the faculty, staff, and students who are in different proportions die-hard allies or radical queers and trans folks. They guide the culture of the college and demand curriculum and structure that advances the success of all of us, even those most wounded by rejection from our own families and communities. It is out of this love, born from trauma, that makes advancing ethnic studies through a queer frame particularly important. Thank you.
Wow, what a panel, huh? I did mention that we had another panelist who wasn't attending, was going to talk about a project.